Hello, welcome back to TSC Talks, the podcast where we talk about tuberous sclerosis complex and other related issues. Hello, Jill here. I'm going to insert a piece in here about gratitude. I realized it's been almost a year since I attended the World TSC Conference in Dallas, and how profoundly my life was impacted by meeting so many of you and feeling so much less alone and starting the podcast. And this episode, I share some glimpses from people that have been on the podcast about difficulties and some of the challenges and the ways, misperceptions and misunderstandings, and it's a little bit heavy, but I feel like this past week I can share with you that in the same week, my daughter had a 3-hour status seizure. It was a partial onset, progressing to partial complex. So that was really difficult. And my son is really sharing a lot about his certificate of completion from high school that he received. And he's under the impression that it is indeed a diploma. And he announced it in the backseat of the car to his sisters, who know that that's not really the case. And, you know, it's been a long time. I've been a caregiver and a parent, and I am grateful. But I guess I can share that with you and tell you that it has been a heavy week. And I find that I have to honor some grief and, you know, really kind of shift my perception. So I think I just want to dedicate this podcast to all you TSC moms out there that I met, and the power of sharing our stories and getting the word out there about the challenges that we face that are really exceptional. So thanks so much for listening. And if you're going to do one thing for me, you don't need to give me money, but I'm going to drop a crowdfunding campaign. If you would please share it. I believe I have the potential to start more podcasts within the community and outside of the community and really spread the word about challenges that are exceptional in society that really are often overlooked and for which there really is no set course. I think you guys get it. So anyways, if you could share the crowdfunding campaign when I drop it, and thanks so much for tuning in. Love you all. Bye. I'm going to stop talking. I'll give a brief number and name right before each episode. So I'm going to say, take it away, y'all. First, we're starting with Caroline Ramirez. Go ahead, Caroline. Take it away.
Is the loss of community.
Yes.
Most parents of young children have peers that they regularly play date with their friends.
Right.
Or they may be able to, talk to other moms about how hard it is, right? Moms love to talk about how hard it is to parent in a playful kind of way. Right? But the things that are so hard for them to deal with are things that are totally foreign to your experience if you have a medically complex child. And the things that a parent of a medically complex child would talk about as normal stuff that is so hard is horrific and out of a person's ability to relate if they have not lived it.
Absolutely.
So there's a huge loss of community. And even if you just talk about physically being at an event and your child needs you to be on them like a hawk to make sure that they are not eating food off of random people's plates or making sure that they are not doing something that's unsafe, right?
Right.
Most parents of neurotypical kids, if their children get to a certain age and are a certain level of independence, they will stand in a group and visit while their kids play. They will not necessarily be walking with the parent who is walking with the child who is needing the more constant supervision.
Yes.
They're not joining that parent. Right. That parent is separate.
And they're alone.
Is isolated and has lost community when there's more going on where community might be helpful.
Yes. I know for me, making a connection with people in the TSC community was really helpful and important to feel validated and like I could share, these experiences and people didn't kind of slip away slowly back out the door.
Absolutely. Well, there's a super helpful aspect to the Facebook groups, and there's a double-edged sword there as well.
Yes.
Because on one hand, it feels so good to have community, so good to have people get it. And if you want to have lots of examples of how things could get worse for your child, and you want an opportunity to flood your imagination with lots and lots and lots of worries, it's really easy to feel that reading all the posts, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The posts are great. Most people who are posting are the people who are in distress, which is good because they're the people who are reaching out and are needing connection
Mm-hmm.
and are wanting to get support and help. And if you take all of those posts as evidence of what is probably going to happen to your child, and by extension, something that you're going to have to be able to emotionally manage and deal with, you can get really, really scared, especially early.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. In fact, I couldn't read a lot of I had to step away, and I think looking back, I think it was kind of that, like, I don't want to play these situations out right now. I can't. But also, losing a little bit of the community too. So it's finding that balance, I think. But
Right.
You're raising a really important point of the groups and stuff. There is a lot of stuff that is going to be overwhelming, and what's enough and yeah. So.
And most people will not know until they're already upset and not
Yeah.
sleeping that they probably need to stop reading.
It's not funny, but
know?
yeah, oh my goodness, right. Yeah, this is really I can feel this starting to affect me. So.
Yeah.
Rebecca Thoreau, take it away. Rebecca. So they're blue in the face, but about how important it is to try to get on top of the behaviors. But until they're in the throes of it, it's almost like I didn't want to hear it because you're dealing with, you've got other things. Oh my God. I mean, now I have to take my kid to a psychiatrist and, have a behavior plan, and it's just too much.
And there's such a woeful lack of care in that area generally, and there's such a deficit in terms of the amount of openings. So all the psychiatrists are full, all the therapists are full, all the centers are full. I had a list of 30 therapists I called. None of them would take her.
Oh, I believe it.
I had a list of multiple psychiatrists. Either they didn't take insurance, they wouldn't take her. They'd never heard of tuberous sclerosis. They couldn't take her because of that, or they had heard it and they had never treated anybody. I literally took her. Somebody gave us, a doctor's office gave us an appointment. Now, this is a medical director of a children's psychiatric inpatient in Connecticut. Took her to that doctor, and we sit down and we start talking, and he says, I won't see her in front of her.
Oh my goodness.
You're just left floundering. There's nothing.
And you get things in place, and then your insurance, there's some glitch and something shifts, and then you lose your therapist and you're back to square one.
Yeah. And it'd be great to get other parents. I think there's in on the conversation, because I think there's also people are really scared to talk about it because no one wants to out their kids on their because of behavior. And I think there's also it's just also such a taboo to talk about.
It really is.
And we get things in our family like, why does she act that way? Because she has brain tumors. That's kind of, in the parts of her brain that aren't, don't have tumors, the neurons aren't developed the same way as ours are. The chemicals in her brain aren't the same. And, she's been traumatized her whole life medically. And, why do you act the way you do? Like, there's other reasons. Like, it's complex. There's no one reason. But the number one basic thing you can boil it down to is because she has brain tumors. That's why she acts that way. Can we just move on? Let's just make things simple. Like,
There's no making it simple.
No, but there's just, when it comes down to the why, there's really no answering why. It's like asking, why does she have tuberous sclerosis? I don't know. I don't know, because she has a deletion on, her 16th chromosome.
Let's just treat the symptoms. I mean, and go forward, because there is no real explaining, and it's so different across. No two kids with TSC are the same. So there's the behaviors there's a lot of patterns, but I look at what people are posting, and I think I've experienced a lot, and I'll be like, oh wow, that's something different.
Yeah.
Just all over the place. So it definitely it needs to be talked about as much as just straight tuberous sclerosis complex stuff.
Right.
So.
And I think there is a lot of guilt that goes along with all of this. And I think that because and along with the behavioral part of this, and especially, whether your child inherited TS or it's a spontaneous mutation, there's a lot of guilt that comes with it in different forms. And it's like that why piece, there's never going to be an answer. And it, why did it happen? I don't know. Hera looked at Zeus the wrong way. Jesus Christ rode in on a unicorn.
Yeah, pretty much.
Somebody
let's just not
and then
put a label and a box around it. Let's just treat it.
Yeah. And then there was a base pair deletion, and that's what happened, and then it rung up the wrong protein and that's what happened. And in the early days, I would definitely not come up with that answer. I would come up with some other answer of why, and it was all my fault.
Oh boy.
And when your kid is raging, or when your kid is just in the throes of it, if you get to that dark place for just a moment and you ask why, it can really throw you for a loop. And so I think people are scared to talk about it for some of those reasons, and scared to talk about it because you don't know what it means for the future, and that the future is a really scary place. And I think people with younger kids, I think, are afraid to talk about some of the medical manifestations because they worry about that. Am I going to be caretaking for my child for the rest of their lives? But the behavioral piece is even scarier, because what does this mean for my child for the future?
Yeah.
I think way too much sometimes, and I read way too much sometimes. And I have those scary moments sometimes where I think, like, oh God, I read that article about the shooter at Newtown, and all of the
just
things
had that in your book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he couldn't stand, and all of that. So
no, I don't know.
Yeah.
You just do the best you can and keep moving forward. It's always something, Rebecca.
It's always something.
Yeah.
Adriana Piltz. Take it away, Adriana.
The behavioral thing, the older he got, the more aggressive it is. And it's getting, sometimes, like, honestly, I feel like I just want to run.
I hear you. I do.
I just run. But at the same time, you're like, well, I can't. Right? He's still my child. And I made the promise when he was born that I will take care of him no matter what it is.
Yes.
He's not taking any medication. He was on we got about 6 of them a day, then they lower it to 5 a day, then they lower it to 4 a day, then to 3, and, always monitoring the seizures. Mm-hmm. Seizures didn't, he doesn't have any seizures as the last MRI he had.
That's good.
So it's good.
Knock on wood.
Yes. And we don't give him no more Vigabatrin, right? So he's not on any medication. But when I went to talk to Dr.